It's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy with a quick question. Have you downloaded the Black Primacy app yet? If you haven't, don't worry about it. I just wanted to remind you that it is the number one way to find black owned businesses near you. Whether you're looking for food, fashion, or services, we've got you covered on this app. So download it now and start supporting black owned businesses in your area today. All right? Link in the description.
This spring, the annual Met Gala in New York City, one of the bigger fashion events of the year, will highlight the indelible style of black men. The Met's 2025 exhibition, titled Superfine, Tailoring Black Style, opens in May and explores the emergence and significance of the black dandy. We looked into the rich and complicated historical style and its relevance today. It's part of our ongoing series, Race Matters.
Now, as you may have noticed, I always have not one, but two wardrobe setups in this office.
Growing up in New York City, Dandy Wellington says he started paying special attention to his appearance at an early age, his style inspired by the Harlem Renaissance. And the name fits his persona. He's a dandy, clothes tailored, hats pristine, and attitude refined.
It's a worldwide community. So I'll be inspired by people who are in Paris, who are in LA, people who are in the Congo. There is such a connection to style and also a connection to culture. The history of Black dandyism and Black sartorial style is complicated. It's wrapped up in migration and civil rights.
Dandyism was first introduced to black culture during the transatlantic slave trade. Well-dressed enslaved men were seen as fixtures of wealth for their enslavers. But tailored attire and wit also offered a path for black men to imagine possibility and power. From 18th century England to today, it's a way of being that has evolved with the times.
The black dandy is a complicated figure throughout history.
We spoke recently with Washington Post senior critic at large, Robin Givhan, who has long covered the fashion industry.
There was, the sort of early idea of enslaved black men who were often sort of dressed in fine clothing in order to reflect the status of the enslaver. And you also have black dandies who sort of played with the idea of gender and really sort of tapped into sort of feminine tropes, taking ownership of their body and of their presence, but, embellishing it in a way that signifies its value and its strength.
Tell me more about that, the idea that the black dandy aesthetic is in some way a form of resistance, in that it challenges stereotypes about black identity and black masculinity.
For a lot of dandies, part of their way of dressing is quite emotive and sensual, and that breaks definitely some of the cultural expectations of black men. And at the same time, during the civil rights movement, the way that activists dressed was to reflect the degree of sort of respect that they not only had for themselves, but also the respect that they were demanding from society at large.
For some leaders in the fight for civil rights, how they dressed was a critical part of achieving their agenda.
Frederick Douglass was the most photographed man amongst his contemporaries in the 19th century, and he dressed up. Anytime you saw Frederick Douglass, he was dressed up.
Curator Chantrell P. Lewis is the author of Dandelion, The Black Dandy and Street Style.
In the 20th century, W.E.B. Du Bois was very fixated on fighting racism, fighting oppression through aesthetics. In a time post-Trayvon Martin, post many different incidents of police violence in the U.S., there was like a large mass movement of young black people in urban areas, whether in the U.S., in the U.K., in South Africa, that began really dressing up for themselves and for their own sense of cultural pride and dignity.
Throughout history, black style movements have been closely linked to individual identity. And with a style that's moved across the globe, every dandy is unique, each with the swagger of his own.
You could have someone like me who's very much connected to the jazz age and the swing era, vintage as the inspiration. But then, of course, there's also Black dandies that wear Ankara prints and Black dandies that use streetwear as their, mode of expression.
There is a generation of Black men, as you well know, who take such pride in dressing to the nines, a perfectly coordinated suit with gleaming alligator shoes. They would probably describe themselves as having swagger. They probably wouldn't describe themselves as being a dandy. How do you draw that line between sort of exuding old school cool and being a Black dandy?
I grew up in Detroit, and I think about, some of the men who, firmly believed that if your shoes were not matching your suit, then you were just sort of not properly dressed. And for some Black men, just being seen in sort of full Technicolor is an incredible victory.
In the U.S., the bold fashion is seen coast to coast, from Hollywood red carpets to the NBA and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This year's Met Gala's theme, Superfine, Tailoring Black Style, will explore the history of the Black dandy, and while historically a dandy traditionally referred to men, the movement has grown.
One of the first contemporary Black dandies to get a lot of attention was Janelle Monáe. She was known for wearing her black and white suits, and of course it was a nod to her grandmother who cleaned for a living.
Secondhand thrifting.
For younger generations coming into their own, Lakin Carlton, known as the ethical stylist, advises her clients not to break the bank.
So you go to the thrift store, you see in the menswear section, there's always so many, suits and blazers and slacks and things like that. That's where you start.
And every outing brings a new opportunity to add to the wardrobe.
This is a straw boater that I found in England. Vintage shopping is a big part of how I find some of the things. Of course, there are modern designers who make incredible things, but there's something about the craftsmanship of these items.
A style now center stage at the Super Bowl of the fashion industry. How does it strike you that the Met has taken this on as their theme for this year's gala?
There's a little bit of courageousness in it. This one has the benefit of really coming at a time when questions about diversity and identity and gender are very much at the center of cultural and political conversations. And so I think it's quite timely.
And for Dandy Wellington,
at the end of the day, it is just me. It's what brings me joy, Whether I'm going to the supermarket or I'm going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the style is always with me.
All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please check out the other content that we have on this channel. But before you go, I wanted to remind you again not to forget to check out the Black Primacy app. It is the best way to connect with Black-owned businesses near you. They need your support. We need your support. Link in the description.